assistant, Squawkers McCaw, is very well accepted, and I would say even loved by most of my coworkers today. It hasn't always been this way. I remember the first time I met my coworker, Donna. She said, "What's that bird for?" And I said, "Oh, this is Squawkers. He works with me." And she said, "No, really, what's it for?" It may have been around that time that I started to make a list of Squawker's job responsibilities. First, I had to consult his parrot-centered employment plan. I'm an autistic person with 2 degrees in social work, working for the University of Kentucky on a project to support students with intellectual disabilities in college. I'm not supposed to exist. Autistic people are not to become social workers. And when I am known to exist, I'm told that I must be called a person with autism. It's for my own good, the respectful way to say it. Only it's a lie. Autism isn't temporary, trivial, or terrible. It's a word to describe the way my brain works. It's a central part of my identity, not something I'm with. Squawkers, it turns out, is really good at some of the things that I find challenging. He remembers to say hello to everyone and easily brings up topics of conversation. Yes, he does that rapport thing. I don't do it as well. He's also a source of sameness and comfort for me in a world of confusing and conflicting input. You see, for many autistic people, sensory information is at all times dialed up to 10, so that the buzz of overhead lights can be as loud as your voices, the patterns in a carpet as compelling in the stories they tell as the expressions on your face are. When I hold Squawkers, he turns down the noise. Without this bird, I'm more inclined to make my own animal sounds or to leave the room unexpectedly in the middle of a conversation. Further stressed and parrotless, I may bite my hand or even bang my head on the table. These are not the things that get you a second interview. Another thing Squawkers does for me is he helps me to sort people from the folks that I need to meet from those that I really don't necessarily need to know. Autism can sometimes fall into that category people call invisible disability. Squawkers let you know that there is something possibly a little different here. Some people have a problem with that. Some people feel that I should at least do the best I can to blend in. But here's the thing. You were going to find me out. Maybe when I greeted you without looking at your face, or forgot how to talk in the middle of a sentence, you were going to know there was something different. And if you would be inclined to avoid or disrespect me for my differences, can we just get that out of the way up front? I would prefer it. So Squawkers is an accommodation that serves several functions. He and I have been together for longer than I've been at my current job. And I have seen, too, that other autistic people and others with cognitive disabilities have arrived at the workplace with accommodations already in hand. But too often these have been taken away. They've been called behaviors, they've been treated with therapies and punishment. And it begins long before we are ready to enter the workforce. For Joe, an autistic boy starting first grade in a Midwestern city, it started on the first day of school. Everything seemed to be going fine until about an hour into the day, the teacher found him sitting in the middle of the class with no pants on. So she took him to the bathroom, helped him get his pants back on. A couple of hours later, pants were off again. The same thing happened the next day. Joe's mother said, "Well, he's never done this before. It's got to be something in the school environment that's triggering it." And a behavior specialist was called in. And he said, "This is attention-seeking behavior, and Joe was put on a plan of rewards and punishments based on how long he was able to keep his pants on. But pretty much things stayed just the same until the teacher asked Joe's mother the right question. What does he wear at home? And Joe's mom said, at home, he wears sweatpants. But there are things about Joe that are different from the other kids. And when he goes to school, we want him to fit in. We want him to be comfortable. So he dresses like the other boys in blue jeans. Remember what I said about the sensory information being dialed up to 10? To Joe, the seams on blue jeans felt like sandpaper against his legs. And that pain demanded all his attention. There was nothing left for learning. He took his pants off so he could listen to the teacher. And once this was understood, Joe was allowed to wear sweatpants to school, and he did not have the behavior again. Sweatpants were Joe's Squawkers McCaw. Julie was an autistic woman working as an intern at an office in Lexington. Her favorite thing in the world to talk about was Walt Disney World and Disney movies. And she engaged everyone who walked through her workspace with snippets of dialogue from Disney. But each time she opened her mouth, her job coach reminded her that she was at work and she was only to talk about these topics on break. Meanwhile, everyone else in the office chatted on about their children, pets, favorite sports teams, somehow managing to complete their work anyway. And only Julie's topic of interest was forbidden. This was because Julie's parents, along with her employment specialist, had determined that Disney was not an age-appropriate topic for work, and that certainly quotes from Disney movies could not be considered functional communication. The result was that Julie said pretty much nothing during the workday. She was quiet. And to fill that space, her job coach chatted on endlessly about the minutia of what Julie was doing. Coworkers would hear her from down the hall saying, "Okay, Julie, now it's time to take the paper out of the printer. And now we're going to fold it into thirds." While many coworkers had been engaged and able to relate to the talks about Disney characters, no one in the office was willing to listen to someone talk about how to fold a piece of paper. The other workers began to avoid the area where Julie worked. She lost her means of communication, the connection she was beginning to build with others, and the others in the workplace lost out on an opportunity to get to know a really interesting person a little bit better. See, Disney isn't just Disney. Sometimes when autistic people can't find words for things, we need to borrow. And those movies are full of characters facing challenges and adversity and expressing thoughts and emotions. And Julie had developed a wide vocabulary of thoughts and emotions that she was able to communicate through using these lines. But in the name of proper social skills and age appropriateness, that was taken away from her. Disney was her Squawkers McCaw. For Ben, the problem was that his accommodation may have been a little bit too conventional. It looked a little bit to the employer perhaps like special privilege, because what he needed was to use earphones to block out the extraneous noise. So every day he used an iPod and earphones, and what he really wanted to do was be a librarian. And his supported employment specialist found him an internship at a library, but it seems there were rules there. And instead of negotiating with that employer and explaining that this was a necessary accommodation, she advised Ben to follow the rules. And instead, he would have a job coach with him every time that he worked. In the end, that didn't work out for Ben or his employer, and his hours were reduced to 1 hour per week. We'll never know how successful he might have been if allowed to keep the accommodation he had developed for himself. A couple of years ago, Squawkers McCaw and I went to the National TASH Conference. At the poster session, there were a number of people from the University of Kentucky presenting, and one was a professor from the special education department, someone I'd not met before, so I went up to her to introduce myself, and she said, "Oh, you're from UK too. But look, you're giving the university a bad name carrying that parrot around." What was she thinking? That a stuffed animal is not age appropriate. That maybe someone would think I had an intellectual disability. And what would be so terrible about that? When we ask people with invisible disabilities to assimilate, we are telling them to stay invisible. We need to ask ourselves, when we're negotiating accommodations, who is this for? Is this really for the person with the disability? Or are we more concerned about appearances, the comfort of others, making sure everyone looks as much alike as possible? Because if we're completely honest with ourselves, we may see that intentionally or not, we are continuing to promote a climate of shame around disability. What we're really saying is that some types of disability are so bad that they should be hidden whenever possible. And we are editing some of the most interesting facts about people out of the stories of their lives. If people never meet somebody in the workplace who speaks fluent Disney as a first language or carries an animatronic bird, we will continue to be seen as exotic, strange, incapable, or whatever it is that people are so afraid of. Do you know what is age appropriate for an adult? Making our own decisions, choosing our own accommodations, asserting our identities in ways that are meaningful to us, whether or not it makes others uncomfortable. What can you, as supported employment specialists, do to help? You may feel frustrated by this. You may feel that you're not the ones with the power. I can see that. There's no way you can make employers open their hearts and minds to the full range of human diversity. But you who are considered normal, you do have more power and more social capital than people with disabilities. You have relationships with employers and business people. If they will listen to you and take you seriously, please ask them to listen to people with disabilities as well. Ask them to take us seriously too. Consider supporting the agendas of disability rights activists. Aren't there already enough people supporting only the agendas of businesses and corporations? Aren't there already enough people in your offices without a stuffed animal or an animatronic parrot? I work in a place where now everyone squawks. We squawk good morning and we squawk good night. And these exchanges are no less meaningful than the more standard hello and how are you. Just a little bit different. Last Halloween, Squawker's son, Bixby, married a duckling named Quacks. The wedding took place at the office. It was catered. There was sparkling cider, a 3-tiered cake, a photographer, the whole works. The training director of our institute officiated the wedding, and afterward, the couple moved into a private nest at the office. It's not the normal way things are done. I mean, come on, living at the office? But for them, it seems to work just fine. See, when you find that place where you really fit, work can be a pretty good place to be. Squawk.